Well, let's begin now. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Lunch with NAIOP webinar. Before we get started today, our president, Jason Kisselbach, will share a few thoughts.
Thanks, Paul. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our third webinar in the Lunch with NAIOP series. Today, our topic is construction, and I know there will be some great insight from our speakers. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors for their continued support, which allows us to deliver key advocacy and education initiatives for the local commercial real estate community. Our sponsors fund all the work that we do and deserve our recognition and thanks. Despite the current disruption, we continue to work hard to deliver on the NAIOP pillars of advocacy, education, networking, and support for developing leaders. Our Government Relations Committee continues to work with local government to bring the voice and perspective of our industry to current issues. The committee has also been successful in putting out a weekly COVID-19 newsletter on topics of interest and making resources available through our website. Our Developing Leaders Committee is very active, putting on professional virtual happy hour events with high caliber speakers and providing a great mix of education, mentoring, and networking. And finally, our Breakfast Committee was able to adjust to virtual programming and launch this Lunch with NAIOP webinar series, bringing you timely information from experts about the current state of our industry. We encourage you to follow NAIOP Vancouver on social media to stay informed of the many national and local resources available, and we hope you'll continue to participate in our upcoming Lunch with NAIOP events. For more information on upcoming programming or advocacy, please visit the NAIOP Vancouver website and feel free to email us. Let's get to today's conversation. Today, we are happy to welcome Bill Tucker, a past member of NAIOP Vancouver Chapter Board of Directors and present CEO of Omicron. And our moderator, Loren Bergmann of CBRE, will discuss with Bill the current state of construction and what is anticipated as the economy begins the process of reopening. If you have questions for the panel, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. I will now turn the webinar over to Loren Bergmann of CBRE.
Thanks so much, Jason. And happy Thursday to all of you. And I hope that you're all finding new wins with work-life balance as we move through this transitional phase. Today, we're really lucky to have someone with Bill Tucker's expertise across multiple sectors to discuss the current state of construction and prospects post-COVID. And just to be clear, we are going to focus today on the pre-vaccine state of play versus post-vaccine. In the limited time we have, we are going to try to get moving forward. We're especially excited to also gauge insight of our audience today with some real-time polling and hopefully tackle some of your questions. So Bill, let's get the conversation started. In researching this topic, I looked at the WorkSafe BC site and perused the challenging guidelines specific to construction. So I wondered if you could share the impact of COVID and what it's had on Omicron projects specifically, and if there's any other reno projects that you are working on specific to COVID renovations.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Loren, and good to be here today. And just a shout out to Jason and the current board of directors at NAIOP. It's great to see you guys pivoting quickly as it relates to the current situation and being able to bring great content. You know, I think that NAIOP's always had a special place in our market, and I enjoyed 10 great years with the organization on the board and various positions, and the current group's doing a fantastic job. So just commend you guys for that under difficult circumstances. Getting to your question, Loren, I think that actually, you know, I've told our staff here that we've actually been in the COVID honeymoon period. The last 8 to 10 weeks, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic because I have an optimistic message, I think, for everyone, but the last couple months has been relatively straightforward. You know, there were bumps and whatnot getting to home offices and distributed workforce and whatnot. but our construction sites still continued in our marketplace, unlike other parts of Canada and North America. So that was a positive thing. And some of the things that we tackled, as long as you remain reasonably fluid over the last, call it 8 to 10 weeks, I think you were able to negotiate through and learn as you go, and that was a positive thing. One of the challenges that I saw, and now I'm going to flip my thinking to sort of a forward position. So I'm going to call this phase 2. So my comments are going to be, essentially this point forward in the marketplace. Every construction site out there represents a business onto its own. Somewhat different than our office marketplace is that in office marketplaces, in your offices, you have infrastructure. There's some regular flow, people on the same people each and every day, and they come through the office and they get to know things. But every construction site has a new group of trades, a new group of people, and a new way of operating. And that happens throughout. Our company works on the construction side, and we're in the development, design, and construction business. But today our focus is on the construction side. We work throughout many markets in British Columbia, and I can tell you that each one of them functions in a slightly different manner. And restrictions are tighter in some areas, and more lax in others. But as a company, if you're going to survive and I would say thrive in this kind of environment, you really have to set a standard for your operation. And then in all of these different geographies or all of these different sites with a multitude of different trades, you actually have to get them singing off the same song sheet. And that's, as a general contractor or the developer on a particular project, we have to set that standard. And we have to set that bar, and we have to expect people to follow those. And to that extent, I think it's been very positive. Trades, people want to work, people want to keep the economy going, and it's been incredible to see people retool, just to see our superintendents and safety officers on sites come up with innovative ways to keep people safe as we begin to process work under whatever this new normal is, and for however long this actually goes. So, and I guess to finish, a couple of things, from a company point of view, we're probably spending a lot more management time, and that management time is related to what I just talked about, but also, Loren, kind of on the due diligence side. Because, obviously very few over the last couple of months, but we will start to see challenges, trade failures. We will start to see supplier issues, failures on that front. We'll start to see companies really, really get stretched. And in doing that, we want to make sure that we got the continuity to take a project from start to finish with the same team. Whenever we have to replace, it's a real challenge. It's a challenge. It's a costly exercise. And it typically hurts us from a schedule point of view. So there's all kinds of added due diligence. If you've got the right team and you're doing all that due diligence, I think that there's lots of opportunity. And I think you can still process your work quite nicely in this market. But watch for banks and bonding companies to be looking very closely at companies in our industry over the next 6 to 12 months, because that's where the fissures will open up to begin with. And watch for companies. I know ours. I've told our team we have to develop new management procedures for what I'm calling our distributed workforce. We're quite an integrated design, construction, development organization, and with a team that involves 20 people from design to construction, distributed everywhere, and then an actual site that's functioning and under construction. You have to have platforms that are going to take you across those multiple areas, those multiple people, and make sure that everyone's accountable to their tasks and what they're doing. So lots of challenges for us. We're trying our best to rise to that challenge. I think we're doing a good job. I'm really, really proud of our team here at Omicron. And I think that we need to be nimble and responsive, and I think you can still thrive in this community if you are.
It sounds like you had a lot of systems in place to allow you to be nimble in this market. So that's really good to hear. And I'm not sure everyone was able to deal with it as well as Omicron. And as we look at, I've been talking with a lot of our clients, and of course, they're also experiencing significant challenges during the last few weeks and months. And pricing is definitely top of mind. That's a hot topic. So, if you could share any insight on what you see as far as construction pricing, we're getting asked this a lot over the next 6 to 12 months, that would be great.
Yeah, well, geez, that's the first time I've ever received that question here in this COVID situation. And as a result, I've put together a little poll. So, Paul, if you're in the background there, can you flash up the question one? I want to find out sort of those people in the audience right now, if that's what we call this on Zoom. I'm not really sure. What are you expecting pricing over the next 6 months to do? How are people feeling about that? Where's your general sense? So maybe you could just click your screen there and give us your results, and then I'll give you my opinion in terms of what I think pricing is going to do and where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So let me just pull that up a little bit. So I'm a bit surprised at the balance there between our out there in our audience in terms of their thought process. Okay, Loren, here's my thoughts on the point. Generally, this story is yet to be written, but if we go off of some of our history, and the fact that I have reached out to trades, we have tendered a bit of work. We are in the market with quite a chunk of work right now. I would say that we are going to see prices decrease in the short period, and for me, 6 months is the short period. There are some influences that will kind of change that. We've got a Canadian dollar issue because of oil, and I think everyone realizes that we have a tremendous amount of product that comes over that U.S. border into the Canadian construction industry, and that's being hit hard. I was actually talking to a trade recently, and he was explaining to me that they had a contract for a generator, and they had set that contract back in February, and we're executing on the order in March. And when they finally got all the paperwork ready to go, that $1 million generator was well in excess of $1 million, about 1.15. So that's $150,000, and then all of a sudden now it's and this individual is very well respected electrical company here in town, and is able to go off their traditional buying power and their relationship. So they're able to negotiate a successful solution to that they could live with. But it's an example of something coming out of thin air in terms of an increase. So that's one factor that we're struggling with. But then if you look at something like steel on the other side, I know that's not used as much as in our TIs, but it's a big part of our construction industry. Well, steel's seen a real slide, and how is that going to manifest itself into tenders over the next 6 months? I suspect that we're going to see sharper pricing. One of the challenges for that market, is the fact that 50% of the steel, more than 50% of the steel, is actually made in China, and there's been a real sort of mismatch in terms of supply and demand because of the way the world actually shut down and the way the world's opening back up again, and then some of the delays that we're seeing. So that's a challenge. So you got positives, you got negatives, but ultimately what you're going to find is that in the short term, people want to maintain their labor force, and many union companies have a situation where if they lose their guys, they're back to the hall and they got to get new guys. Hopefully they get the same guys in continuity in terms of labor force. And then the non-union maybe don't have that haul and do have to do layoffs if there's not that work. No one wants to do that. So we're an open shop builder, and what we see is that right across the board, union, non-union, everyone wants to maintain their staff. And in order to maintain their staff, they're going to be aggressive. In the short period, we're going to see some very aggressive numbers, I believe. I give you just a couple of quick examples. We tendered a number of trades 3 weeks ago. We found every single price that came in was below budget that we had set. And we had set those budgets pre-COVID based on current market. We had very, very strong data. We knew where those prices should be, and every one of them came in less. And the variance was between 1% less and 9% less. So it was material. We are out to the market with, as I said, some large packages, and this story is going to be written over the next month to see what we're actually going to receive in terms of $20 or $25 million worth of trade packages, and how that's going to be reflected in terms of pricing. But I think generally people can expect over the short term prices are going to go down. And over the longer term, we're going to, the whole industry is going to fight to get prices back up, because we want to pay our people, we want to keep our people, and people need to earn a living wage in many parts of this province. So
I think that's great news, and actually, takes apart some of the rumors that we've heard, because there is talk that things would increase with the challenges of sites moving forward. And that brings us to our next topic, is when we look at schedules. And, on local walks, I've been looking at job sites and observing how they are trying to social distance. And then we've had some news coverage on that too. And just wanted to maybe open up the discussion on actual schedules moving forward, because obviously there are challenges, but you also mentioned there's some gains in that arena. So maybe we could just open that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just close off, because we did have a question from the audience around PPE. And, is PPE on job sites going to... PPE has always been a big part of what we do on our construction sites. Safety is paramount. We spend a lot of money already on safety, and we're going to continue to spend that money as an industry on safety. That's the right place to spend money. People have to go home to their families after a good day's work on a construction site. So, masks and whatever, washing stations. When we first got into this situation, we had our superintendents kind of come together, come up with some ideas, and we installed hand washing stations on the outside of trailers. Well, that's a $200 item from Home Depot. It's a wash bucket. It's, you put it in place and away you go. So it's not a big deal. So I'm not thinking that that's going to drive it up. So I just wanted to close that question off from the previous question about pricing. So I don't think it's going to do it. I think just ultimately we're going to continue with safety. If anything, we're schedule impacts will be the question mark. So let me ask that question of the audience. Does the audience believe that we're going to see, and maybe you can bring up the next question there, Paul, if you're in the background, some lengthening, some shortening, or stay the same as it relates to schedules?
Looks far more definitive than the pricing question here.
Well, I can't see the results yet. You guys have to pop that up. I don't know how that comes up. I don't know how that works. Oh, okay, lengthen. Okay, and I would say, from my perspective, we saw instant schedule slippage when we entered, and I know we were going to focus on the future of the COVID, but when we first got into it, we had to make all kinds of changes on site and adaptations, and those adaptations just simply took time, and that's manpower, and that's dealing with every single trade that's there and making sure you've got good, strong work procedures. So my sense is that we got through that. Now we're finding a new norm in terms of continuity and how we're going to operate. But at the same time, we are not. We're not going to be immune to further challenges. we expect that we're going to have challenges on sites vis-a-vis some outbreak, whatever the case may be. It'll be an ongoing challenge, and you got to think about it from a schedule contingency point of view. Now, there are some positives out there. The positives are, and I made this comment a couple of times over the last few weeks. I think, over the last month, you could drop a load of steel out on Georgia Street, and that load of steel could stay there, and you could hoist it into place without too much trouble in terms of traffic. And I just got to tell you, could you guys, you might need to get a room. Sorry. I'm sure HR is going to be all over me for that comment. That used to mean something quite a bit different, but anyways. So on the schedule side, deliveries are more straightforward right now. People are working staggered shifts to help with physical distancing. And we're finding right across the board, all of our trades are really amenable to doing things in a different way so that they can maintain that pace. Ultimately, everyone's on the same page as it relates to schedule. The quicker we get a project done, the more profitable that project is. So we're all motivated. So there's some positives and there's some negatives. On balance, I think that we're only going to see maybe, somewhere between not more than a 10% slip if we're really careful, but it's going to be management intensive, and it's going to rely on really cities being timely with permits, with approvals, with reviews, with inspections, etc. And that's an externality that I don't think we've totally understood yet. Like, if you can't get your inspector there and you can't close up a wall, that's going to be a challenge. That's where you could start to see some slippage. So we need the whole market to kind of work together in order to maintain some of these schedules that we've put down. And we're going to get real close, but chances are there's going to be some amount.
So I'm thinking about people starting to re-enter the workplace over the coming weeks. I think it's going to be a very staggered approach, but I guess that's going to start to be more of your new normal. You're not going to be able to do that on Georgia Street anymore. So I guess going forward, you've already anticipated what it's going to be like to share, elevators and building access, et cetera, with actual tenants.
To some degree, I think we have, but that story is again one that's yet to be written. I would throw out another question. I've got question number 3 here, and just a real quick answer on this. Paul, can you throw that up? Are people expecting further lockdowns this year? What's the anticipation? Interesting. So obviously the majority do there by those results. I think that from a company point of view, we are expecting that. And when it happens, if construction sites remain open, we're going to use that to our advantage to try and accelerate things, because we'll have procedures in place. We'll have new management systems in place. We'll be way more nimble understanding how we're going to have to adapt to this area. Or to this new, whatever we're calling a new normal. But one of the things that we really have to guard against right now, and I think it could be a real challenge going forward, and that's our supply chain. Our supply chain is so globally integrated right now, and you know that you buy a light fixture, buy a mechanical unit. That light fixture may come from a plant in Toronto. It may come from a plant out of Chicago. But chances are there's parts in that light fixture or that mechanical unit or that pump that come from other parts of the world. Lots from China. So individual supply. And if you think about it, you've got this situation where things are so interconnected that if you don't have those parts available on that schedule in order to make that date, it's a backup of the entire system. So that is that is going to be a battle for us in the coming 6 months. And what it means right now, I think we're seeing probably on the material supply, maybe a 30% slippage in some areas. So you have to get out in front of those areas, out in front, pre-ordering of materials and assignment of materials. Don't leave yourself in a position where really all of, you're expecting things to move at the same schedule in this, what you're referring to, Loren, as a pre-vaccine. That's not going to be the case. There are going to be rolling waves. And if there aren't, great. But I'm preparing for rolling waves through this market, and I'm preparing for ongoing challenges, and I'm focusing on systems that can bring us further upstream so we don't have schedule impacts like that.
So, Bill, we were talking over the last couple of days about the biggest challenges facing for the next 6 to 12 months that you're facing. Is that supply chain piece the biggest challenge, do you think?
Yeah, I think, Loren, I think it will be. I think it's, everyone wants to work, right? We've crossed that hurdle in our industry. We might have seen that in the first couple of weeks, people fearful to go into job sites and whatnot, but we're not seeing that today. We're seeing people wanting to work, wanting to get back to business. What we've done is in the tenders and the designs that we're working on, we are making sure that we have as many Canadian alternate products available to that design as possible, to that project as possible. So our estimators are doing a whole bunch of research and digging to ensure that, when somebody specs that lighting fixture or they spec that mechanical unit, it's not a 16-week and subject to a challenge, in a cross-border issue between us and the U.S. or a shutdown somewhere overseas. That if we can, we're going to source it domestically. So in our mindset, we're as much as possible domestic, and that's just a risk mitigation strategy for us on our side to be sure that we can advance our schedules in an appropriate way. And I think that is going to be one of our biggest challenges as an industry. And right behind that is whether or not there are further outbreaks. And if there's further outbreaks and further shutting of businesses and rolling issues, then it's all going to be about management and preservation. So
great news for Canadian suppliers, though.
I think it is actually. I think that there's a ton of opportunity for those people who are going to jump in and take it. Like if you're, if you've got the ability to pivot and create products domestically that perhaps were only available overseas, boy, you could do quite well in this market. There's going to be bright sides for sure.
So I'm just looking at the time. We're almost through half an hour, and I think Bill and I are happy to go through a few more of the topics that we were thinking about and answer some more of your questions. So for those that have to drop off, thank you so much for at least sharing some of your day with us today, but we're going to just continue to plow through some of our material here.
And Loren, maybe I could answer one of the questions that we did receive on the sort of pre-webinar. And that's around how construction companies, should they be investing in new technologies right now? I'm a firm believer in tech in our space, and I think it's long overdue in terms of investment. We did make a commitment a couple of years ago and focused one entire year of our business plan on trying to advance our systems. And it is the one area where we're continuing to invest, albeit we're being extremely careful like everyone else. But I think if you don't have the right kind of platforms, I would rapidly figure out how to get those platforms in place because, the fluidity of this situation requires lots of nimbleness in terms of systems. Over the last number of months, I'll tell you, I don't know if I could learn any more about cameras and switching and platforms and this and that and collaboration tools and sharing, blah, blah, blah. Like we're all becoming very adept to it. But then how do you mine data and share data over networks and make sure that you're still harvesting all this? If you don't have the right platforms in place, then you're going to have big QA/QC problems on projects down the road. And so I would suggest, if you're not investing in tech, find a way to make some of those right now, because it's an important part of being able to survive and then ultimately thrive in this market.
And that's interesting, Bill, because we definitely see that with our clients too. In our research moving forward, there's going to be far greater investment, obviously, in technology and all the platforms, because people have realized that, some companies didn't fare so well after when they were dealing with the first month of this. So I think that's going to be key. Yeah. One of the things that you said that I thought was really interesting the other day is you said, certain sectors aren't as challenging, and you brought up industrial, that it hasn't been as challenging of a sector for you to work in. And I'm just wondering if you could shed some light on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So, some of that's just related to the physical size of the, like building a 100, 200, 300,000 foot industrial building. There's a lot of space on a site like that. There's a lot of concurrent activities that can happen. And you might have 20 trades on that site at any given time. But then look to one of our TI projects where, everyone's on a floor. We might have 20 trades on that TI project as well. And those 20 trades are working in 15 to 25,000 square feet, as opposed to 200,000 square feet plus 8 acres of space. So TIs represent a particular challenge in our industry, just by the nature of the number of people, the close proximity, and the procedures that you need to put into place. And that's not going to change for the foreseeable future, based on what we're seeing right now in the news and hearing from our health officers.
So that kind of ties in with one of our questions that looked at the different sectors of office land versus light industrial. And they were asking us, what is our expectation of land pricing, especially office land versus light industrial?
Oh, so my take is, and we're in the industrial land market, and I see prices there really kind of solid, frankly. And I'm not sure that we're going to see much give there. As it relates to office, it's a big question. We're all questioning. Our clients are coming to us and saying, "Hey, listen, you did a bunch of work for us last year. Great office, blah blah blah. We might need to make some changes to it now. Looking forward in terms of what we might need to do in terms of physical distancing, et cetera, et cetera. Are we going to see offices grow in size? Are we going to see a return to individual offices, as opposed to a lot of open plan workspace? I can tell you that our clients, I'm hearing everything across the board. Geez, do I need as much office space as I have today? Do I need more? That is a story that's evolving. One thing we know is that people need to make their offices safe right now, and we do see clients coming to us again and saying, "Hey, listen, help us out. What can we do here to make sure our people feel safe?" As it relates to the price of land in the office market, I don't think we have the data right now, and I think that I don't think we have the stability to really understand that. And then I contrast that with the industrial side, where I think we've seen rock solid, steady pricing on that front. So.
Yeah, agreed. And I think as we try to look in that crystal ball looking forward, it's really, really challenging. We've looked at a lot of our research is focused on looking at the APAC region and seeing how they've been reacting to this. But as far as what the market is going to do, I think we'd be all challenged by that. But that kind of leads us to our last category. And I wanted to just touch on the future mindset. So I'm just going to share some research that we have learned through Gartner. Just give me one moment. So can everyone see my screen? That's not the right one. Okay, Bill, can you see this data that I have up?
I sure can, yeah.
So this comes to us from Gartner, and they're a leading, they do both research as well as advisory. And what I liked about this study is that they're actually polling, thousands of their clients in the C-suite moving forward. And this is as of week of May 11th. And they looked at all facets of their business and how they were going to be reacting over the next month. But as we look at the future mindset, what I thought was really compelling is we get to the bottom of this. Even so, nearly 9 in 10 organizations have developed a priority list of spending they would reintroduce if and when the hoped for swing toward recovery occurs. And what I find compelling about this is they talk about resuming capital expenditures. That's in their top 3. So as we look towards the future, I think this gives a little bit of a positive spin to what we're all experiencing right now with all of the bad news that we hear too. I think this is quite compelling to get inside their mindset right now. And I'm just wondering if you had any insights also on what you are hearing on the ground about the future mindset.
Well, it's interesting, Loren. I do see, and I hear from our trade relationships, lots of folks are pricing a lot of work. So there's work being priced. Now there's not as many contracts available. Contracts aren't necessarily being let at the rate that they were pre-COVID. People are trying to understand where pricing is. There will be some real winners in this market as it relates to CapEx spending. And I think that the really sharp CFOs are going to time that. They're going to think about it for their organizations, and they're going to have to take a longer view of the world. So, in the next, chances are over the next 6 months, if you fit out an office space, you could get some very sharp numbers. And those numbers may not be available to you 12 to 18 months from now. And I think that that's why, if you've got your lights on and your organization has a long view, and you're liquid and you're not really concerned about where you're going in terms of your balance sheet. Your balance sheet's going to stay strong based on where you are today. I think that they're going to spend. One of the things that I think we have. We're going to have to push through in this market is that we're not a head office town.
Right.
And as considering that we're not a head office town, decisions on CapEx are made in many cases elsewhere, or at least approved elsewhere. We know when companies go into crisis mode, decision making becomes highly centralized, and approvals become more and more difficult to get at funds. So the question becomes if some of these companies that want to expand or spend money on space here in the Vancouver marketplace, are they going to face an uphill battle because those investment decisions are made in New York, and New York is still challenged in another wave or whatever the case may be, or overseas in France, or so there's other parts of the world that are really still struggling, and I think will struggle longer than we are. And if those decisions are coming out of those locations, we could be, hopefully not, we could be collateral damage. So we're going to have to make sure that we raise the flag nice and high and show that there's good value to be had over the next number of months to keep people working. I'm not, most trades that I talk to aren't expecting to make any real money in the near term. They're trying to keep their people going, and as a result, they'll be very, very aggressive in terms of their pricing. So hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, I think that really helps. And I think that, that we're not a head office is really a big factor here on how things are going to progress moving forward. I just had one more question that I thought I might look at as far as our pre-questions, ones that we received before this. I'm just reading through the, would you predict productivity? Yes, one thing I found interesting, and you touched on this a little bit, about investing in new technologies. How are construction companies going to be able to do that? when they need to manage, and you said get everyone to sing on the same page, it takes all this management and technology tools, but it's going to be tough for construction companies to do that given the lay of the land. So what are your thoughts or advice?
Well, my advice is, tools aren't, it's often not the cost of the acquisition of the software or the platform. It's the implementation of that platform. What I've seen is that people are moving very quickly to adoption modes. So if you put something in place that's really going to help you in this period of time, companies are finding a way to bring it operational very, very quickly, almost to the point where it almost makes sense to invest in those systems because now there's such a sense of urgency to get them online that you'll probably do it in the most cost-effective way in this market, and you'll probably see the most benefit long-term because you'll get them in place now when you're going to go into a very management-intensive situation. So, and I guess I come from a world where I'm a real proponent of technology. I think our industry has very much lagged in that area, and we are employing all kinds of new tools, even with our engineers. Whether it's 360-degree cameras and something as simple as the adaptation of FaceTime on a site and how to use that so that people don't have to travel back and forth. And, there's all kinds of really exciting tools out there that are helping make job sites more efficient, and you've got to get behind them. So for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I think we've all been learning a lot of what we can do remotely. And I know for me, I've even been working with clients in other markets across Canada, and it's amazing what we can do with these tools, frankly, to still really engage with our clients. So it's exciting in that way to learn these new technologies.
Yeah.
So looking at our time, I'm thinking that we probably should draw to a close, Bill, because we've ran 50 minutes over. But I really wanted to just thank everyone in the audience for spending your valuable time with us, and really a special thanks to Bill for a really intelligent conversation. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience did too.
Yeah, thanks, Loren. Well, and the shameless plug, we're open for business. Always happy to help anyone with their design and construction needs, and we're just at the other end of the phone, and the team is functioning well. So, and I wish everyone every success in this market. There's there's always been lots of business to go around. We've got a great neighborhood here, and I want everyone to be successful in it. So, thanks so much, everyone. Thank you to NAIOP as well.
Thank you very much, Loren and Bill, for just a fascinating discussion today. Thank you to everyone who was able to attend, and I hope you'll join us next week again for lunch with NAIOP. That concludes the webinar. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.